Brianna, thank you so much. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Alexa Jett, and I'm with the ANCAN Foundation. I'm filling in for Rick Davis tonight. So, first of all, instead of what can I say about tonight's guest, it's more like what can't I say? She is totally multi-talented and a ray of light. From nurse, provider, care partner, patient, singer, artist, and storyteller, Barbie looks up to her. After all, she has inspired an international treaty and created a famous song about President Obama. So you know she's historic. An overcomer for sure. And to quote Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who she actually studied with, certainly sums her up. Beautiful people do not just happen. So it is my honor and privilege to introduce our beautiful person tonight, Geneva Norman. Welcome, Geneva. Oh, we can't hear you just yet.
Thank you so much, Alexa, for that lovely introduction. I'm going to have to behave myself, I guess.
No, we are so excited to talk to you. And I just, one of the exciting things about planning for the Solar Arts Heal is like, there's so many different directions we can go in. And Geneva, one of the things I think is going to be so important about your episode tonight is that you have been through so many different challenges. And I think everyone's going to find something to relate into your story, which is just fantastic. So I'm really hoping that we can bring some encouragement and some laughter to the community tonight.
Okay.
So Geneva, could you tell me a little bit about kind of your history with the arts? And, we'll kind of set up your first story tonight, but can you just kind of walk me through your relationship with art?
Well, I grew up in a family who really had a huge respect for the arts, and they were kind of tricky too. In our house we had three pianos, one on every floor, and there was always someone playing or someone waiting for their turn to play. So they psyched us into thinking that everyone had to learn to play the piano for at least 2 years. And then after that, if you didn't like it, you could just drop it. But of course, you know what happened. You played for 2 years, you started loving your songs and it was over. So that was my beginning, my introduction to music. And it has lasted a lifetime in spite of my background, which, as you know, is fundamentally in the sciences.
Yes, and one of the things I loved when we had our kind of our pre-show interview, you told me that education is your safe space, is I think how you said it. And I just loved that. Could you expand on that a little bit? Because I think sometimes we get in very black and white thinking that science and art can't coexist in one person.
Uh-huh. Okay. Well, I was never cool. As you're going to hear from my second story, I was not a cool person. So you think I'm a black woman that I probably had some kind of coolness to me. Well, I didn't. So I had to find the space where I felt most comfortable since I didn't exactly fit into the nice little description that you might expect.
Mhm.
So for me to learn a neighborhood on the rare occasion that we moved, I didn't really move that much in my life, but whenever I went to a different city, I'd want to know what university was close by. So I could go to that university and learn something, and then I'd be with people who may not have been exactly like me, but nevertheless we would be on the same vibe for the time at
Mhm.
least that we were in school. And their expectation of me was not as high as probably some of my peers some of my, community peers who might have expected me to be, as I said, a little cooler than I actually was. So that is why I have always found comfort there. And then probably because I spent so much time there, after you do, a number of back to back degrees and more degrees, it's like, you get the hang of how this works. And no matter how crazy it drives you, you still are like, okay, well, I know I need to do this in order to do that. And, you kind of get the hang of it. So it was just comfortable to be there.
I love that. Can you share a little bit about, because I believe you started in nursing, was that
Mhm.
kind of the first part, and then you ended up to being a provider. Can you talk about kind of what led you down that path? And I'm just so curious about it.
Well, this is a very interesting story. I come from a family of teachers. There are just tons and tons of teachers. In fact, I think I had like 20 aunts and uncles, and all of them were teachers. And my father, before the Great Migration, was a teacher as well, a math teacher. So when it was time for me to think about these things, I thought, well, of course I'm going to be a teacher like everyone else. And one of my cousins said to me, no, you should probably think about being a nurse because at least you can make enough money. Teachers have never been paid what they're worth, as you know. So, and nurses haven't either, I came to find out later. But anyway, and they told me, be a registered nurse. Well, at that time, they didn't know that there were no schools in our state and region, in fact, that trained Black women or Black people as registered nurses. So I would have had to be a practical nurse or a nursing assistant or something like that. So I just decided to go into psychology because of that. So I stayed in psychology until one day they built a university, a state or county. Uh, the county built a a college, and I was able to go to the nursing program there. And thankfully, they accepted me right away. And even though I had lots of classmates who had been wonderful LPNs in the past and had waited for this opportunity, and they were far more skilled than me, they still let the old girl go through there, and I became an RN. Well, probably as a result of having the background that I had, university background, I got noticed by one of our local universities, and they were just starting what was then called and is still called the nurse practitioner program. And I had done a presentation at the American Nurses Association as a regular RN. And when they started the program, the dean, Rosella Schlotfelt, I'll never forget her, invited me to come to Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland and to join that very first tier of nurse practitioners. And of course, there were very few Black nurse practitioners in that program either, or also, I should say. And so after I became a nurse practitioner, I found out, guess what? Nobody wants a nurse practitioner. They don't even know what it is. So I'd say, I'm a nurse practitioner, everyone. And they'd say, oh, that's wonderful. You are a practical nurse. That's great. And I was like, wait a minute. I'm a nurse. It's something different. But no one knew.
Mhm.
So, just to make a long story short, because no one knew what a nurse practitioner was, and finding work, I could do all kinds of work as a nurse, but I couldn't do
Mhm.
as much as a nurse practitioner, led me to go to medical school. I never thought they would accept me. I was so old already. I had, been in several professions, and I don't know what made them do it, but they did. And then I spent, I went to medical school, packed my son up, and my daughter was already, I think she was in college herself, or anyway, we packed up and went to medical school, and that's a whole different set of stories about the adventures of medical school. Very crazy things there.
You know,
But
Geneva, I think there's something so important about your story, especially for younger people like myself. We
mhm,
like to think that racism and discrimination and segregation wasn't that far, like that was so long ago, but it actually isn't. And when you
no.
share things like it really drives home the point to me as well. So thank you for sharing that. I wanna you're going to be sharing your art tonight is storytelling, and you're going to be sharing a story with us right up next. I'd like for you to set it up for our audience. What do we need to know? And we will love to hear it.
Okay, well, probably the most extraordinarily profound, profoundly painful experience of my life was the loss of my only sister, my baby sister. And it was so important because I was an only child. I grew up in a house with my a lot of family members, but I was an only child. And I waited and I prayed for this little sister. And I thought, you know, if this happens, I'm going to be the happiest person in the world. And finally, my mother said, we're having a baby. And when she was born, they called me at my grandmother's house and let me talk to my mom. And she said, she's here, Jeannie. It's a girl, and you can name her. What do you want to name her? So I named her Barbara. And this is the story of my sister, Barbara. Okay, just a second here. Let's get this. Girl, you are crazy, funny, silly, my sister. Why did you leave me? Barbara, the story. They were green, bunches and bunches of green pods on long stems, an armful of strange flowers, handed to me by my favorite employee, Marie. She said nothing, but just hugged me and gave me the flowers. At home, I put the green things in a vase. I had to hurry to catch a plane. After all, my only sister, my baby sister, was dying, and Lord knows I didn't want to be late for her death. I had just spoken to her yesterday on the phone. She asked me, what if this is it, Jean? She was in intractable, indescribable pain. The pain of a person with pancreatic cancer who had perfed. Perf is medical jargon, which means you have perforated something, poked a hole in it. In this case, the tumor had poked a hole in her intestines. A terminal cancer patient who perfed. Chances of survival? Near zero. But for some reason, that meant nothing to me. I could not make heads or tails of that meaning, even though I had spent my entire life doing every medical thing one could possibly do professionally: psychology, nursing, medicine. Today it was just garble. They whisked me off to the hospital, the best in the country. I'd insisted upon that at the beginning 2 years ago when they said she only had 2 weeks to live. I had classmates from medical school who were on staff at the Cleveland Clinic. Gwen in vascular neurology, and Chris in cardiology. I knew they would watch over her and call me every second if necessary. But now, more than 2 years, 2 full years later, I got there in time to see her on a ventilator. I thought she is the prettiest ventilator patient I've ever seen. Everyone was standing around me, waiting for me to say something profound, clinical, miraculous, and holy at the same time. You see, I am the smart, strong lady in our family, granny, mommy, auntie, even cuzzy lovey. Got a problem? Call Jeannie. But I wasn't even there. Somehow I had left piece by piece from the time of the perf call, advising me to come right away. or maybe from the time of the first call 2 years ago telling me of the biopsy results. Mean, nasty, aggressive pancreatic cancer. Through the funeral, through the flight back home, back to work, and at church, I had completely checked out, and I never really came back to this very day. At home, the millions of long stemmed green pods had transformed into a house full of heavy fragrance from beautiful white lilies, now in full blossom. I knew my baby sister had sent them to me. Girl, you are crazy, funny, silly, my sister. Why did you leave me? Here's a little song. I don't know how I'm going to make it without you. I don't know how I'm going to make it without you. But oh Lord, I try well to raise well your children as my own till I see you again at home. Thank you.
Wow, that was so powerful. And one of the things, one of my favorite quotes is the thing about pain is that it demands to be felt. And I still, I think, grieving can be a lifelong, kind of a life sentence, I like to put it.
Mhm.
And that the song, it was so palpable, your grief and your love. And thank you so much for sharing that with us. With all the education and patient care and everything that you've experienced, was caregiving and caring for your sister different?
Well, yes. Oh, absolutely. Because even though I really um, was a strong patient advocate for all patients, as a nurse practitioner, a doctor, and a psychologist, I cared about patients. You almost can't help it because you're entrenched in so many different areas. But my sister, it felt like my heart was bleeding every day. I wanted to give her everything, anything, my own heart, my own fingers, whatever I could to keep her alive. So it was, even though my dedication to patients was lifelong, this was just a deeper level.
Yeah, I asked because after we met and we had talked about Barbara with pancreatic cancer, I actually reached out because we have a pancreatic cancer support group at ANCAN. I reached out to our caregiver, care partner. She is amazing, Lori Singer. And I asked her, I asked her, do you have a question or a quote for me about this story? And she said, nothing can prepare you for it. And I just, the way that you said that, that summed it up so beautifully. And then, unfortunately, kind of what we're moving on to next, you then had to be an advocate for yourself, and you had a 5-year round of blindness that you still have effects from today. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about how that happened and what you're going through?
Yes, I can't believe I'm smiling about it, but it's it's just well, maybe I'm kind of happy that it's more behind me than in front of me. Uh, I I was a medical director for the United States Department of Homeland Security, and so I was deployed all over the United States in all American holdings. Wherever they said go, I had to go, and I traveled my whole life, so it was not a big deal for me to do that. And on this one trip, we were in Los Angeles, and just in the most wonderful place. I can't share some of these details. Believe me, I had no high clearance or anything. They knew not to tell me anything, but still, just you have to respect the responsibilities there. But anyway, we were in a wonderful place. Let's just say in California, doing our work, the work that we did, and I went someplace to the store, maybe to get food, and I was getting ready to turn into where we were going, where we're staying, and a car was coming towards me, and they were in the turning lane, and I thought, you know, when is he going to turn? And he never turned, and he hit me head on, knocked my car back 100 feet, and I hit my head, fractured both hands and both legs or ankles and leg, and um, had to be cut out of the car. And I didn't know that I couldn't see. I could still see at that point. And they took me, of course, to the hospital. And I remember when the police came to the hospital because of the way this was a car accident. They asked me how fast the car was going, and you know what I told them? I said, I think like 5 miles an hour. And the police were like, I'm sure they were going, "Oh, she's really nuts, this lady, because you can't hit a truck and knock it back 100 feet at 5 miles an hour." And according to the bystanders, the car actually was going 65 miles an hour, 62 to 65 miles an hour, and I was at a standstill. I was just sitting there. So anyway, I went like I always do. I went right back to work, even in casts. My staff put my uh, stethoscope between my fingers through the cast. I'm sure the patients or our patients were like, "What in the world is going on here?" But anyway, and then when it was time for me to go back to Chicago, or I went, and I I didn't really know, it was so gradual that I didn't really know that I was losing my vision. And then it took about maybe a month, but during that month, I was going from place to place and thinking, what is wrong with these people? Are they too cheap to really paint the street signs? They're using weak paint because you can't even see the street signs anymore. And I'd have to stop at every street corner and get out of the car and look up to see where I was. In the grocery store, it got to the place where I just I just could not figure out why they were doing packaging like that. Well, the name of that problem is called denial. So I was in full blown denial. And gradually my vision declined and declined. And I remember going to the optometrist with my daughter, and I actually drove there, my style of driving. I mean, I just, no, denial is at work here. And when he checked my vision, I can't remember what it was, but it was very low. And I said, "Does that mean I can't drive?" And he was walking away, a kind of sophisticated guy, and he turned around and he said, "Can Stevie Wonder drive?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh." I never, he was never that kind of, chummy, friendly guy. So and my daughter took the keys right out of my hand, and I didn't drive again from that. So, year after year, my vision declined. I had to go frequently to the ophthalmologist. I had trauma. The trauma caused the decline in vision, and ultimately, I couldn't even see the wall, where the projection where he was trying to test me. I didn't know even which direction to look in. But the really good news is I would never have a patient from that point forward who was blind that I didn't understand. Oh my gosh, it's such a high level. And I had to go to the Guild for the Blind. I was taught how to carry my cane with the white cane, and I got a folding one because I wanted to be cool. And in my denial, I very often would go places and stand against walls because I could not figure out. I may have got lost count of my steps. You have to count steps to see where you're
Mhm.
going. And I would just lean against the wall and pose like, Vogue. And I couldn't see, I didn't have any idea what was going on. So everyone would ask me when I'd go see the ophthalmologist. My friends would say, "What did he say, Geneva?" Waiting for the day that they were going to say, "He said he can fix it. He said you're going to be better.
Mhm.
He said something is going to happen." And until the fifth year, he never said that. At the fifth year is when I told you I couldn't see anything, couldn't see the
Mhm.
projections at all. And he said, "Okay, we're going to give it a shot to do the surgery on my eyes." They were afraid that if I if they tried to do the surgery before, my entire eye structure would collapse, and then I'd have a look, a more complex
Mhm.
look. And they did the surgery, and I can see. I don't see the way you see,
Mhm.
but I can see. And so my adventures as a person without sight brought me closer to people who are differently abled. I learned so much more, and I learned how you can live in your life, whatever your life is. You can find a way to do things, and other people in the world need to know that you can be included that way. It may not be exactly the way everyone else is there, but we have a way of being there. And we just need the doors open wide so we can all get in there.
Oh, I love that. And I have one more question about that because we'll move on to a story that both Martha Stewart and Snoop Dogg would be proud of. Um, one of the things you mentioned is that how that made you kind of a better provider because you could understand some of the challenges that your patients and the people you were seeing. What can you, from that experience, tell those of us who haven't experienced blindness or a significant disability like that? How could we be better educated and understand that perspective?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is, well, first of all, an accurate assessment to make sure that whatever you think is going on is actually going on. Just think of the neurological problems that people have from myasthenia gravis to Lou Gehrig's disease and
Mhm.
many other neurological problems that you can have. You may think it's multiple sclerosis because your friend had it or something,
Mhm.
but you have to go to the qualified, capable people who know how to diagnose you. That's first, accurate information. And then once your clinical family has supported you in understanding what's going on, then you have to know what resources are available to you. And you have the right to be upset or frustrated if something happens to you. So, a part of the resources that are available to you should also be psychological support and emotional support if that's what you need. And I can't imagine that if it's a major event like losing your ability to see or to hear or to walk or any of those things, it does not hurt at all. to have someone listen to you. Back in my day, when I first started studying psychology, they didn't even have licenses for psychologists. No, it was thought of as like kind of slightly on the hocus pocus side, let's just say.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have providers who are trained and can help you uh, go through the changes of your life, whether they be this kind of problem or any other kinds of problems. Just licensed, certified, and at many different levels as providers of psychological services. That is a very important and big one we don't want to neglect. So for me, the Guild for the Blind, and here in Chicago, we have the Lighthouse, and there are all kinds of services. I mean, with Google today, you can have someone Google for you or Google, and find out things you never knew. Somebody right next door, somebody right down the street might be able to help you. So, and then as allies, we all can be allies of one sort or another. I have a friend now at my university where, as you know, I live in the universities, and she's a lawyer and she's in a wheelchair. Well, she has strengths for vision that I don't have, you know. So together we can share strengths. So I want to make sure we don't overlook the people who have complex issues as also supporters for you. Um, is there anything else you want me? Is there something else you want me to?
No, that was perfect. And that's part of the reason why I love being here at ANCAN, that for a lot of conditions, we offer some of those services too. So now that I teased about Snoop Dogg and Martha Stewart, would you please set up our next story for us and share it, please?
Okay, so this story is a setup in and of itself. One second here. The name of the story is Cinnamon Weed. All right. Background check. In the 1970s, I bid adieu to my sheltered life, took the plunge into marriage, and ventured into the inner city with my husband as my guide. I got to see everything, including the projects, with my own two eyes. We had projects in Cleveland, where I'm from, but they were not as storied as the projects in Chicago. I mean, really, Cabrini Green. You remember Candyman, Candyman, Candyman. If you said it 5 times in the mirror, he would appear. So I'll stop at 3 because heaven knows I would not want to inadvertently invite the Candyman. Anyway, I had not been allowed to venture into such spaces in my entire life. Quite frankly, I don't think my parents had ever seen the projects either. These eye-opening experiences jolted me into the realities and struggles of the Black movement, all under the watchful guidance of my street-smart husband. He was the man who was going to protect me and teach me the ways of our community. So I rolled with him. I was proud to be free and finally a part of the real world, sort of. Hippie time. Of course, there were Black experiences, but there were also many experiences that crossed racial barriers. It was the time of free love, free drugs, free music, and the lesser known free VD clinics to treat STDs caused by free love, free drugs, and free music. We were joined at the hip by the John Lennon Yoko Ono-esque teachings of make love, not war. Lest we forget the other great pop culture philosopher, Ian Dury, who taught us the infamous sex, drugs, and rock and roll. What could possibly go wrong? We wore long, whimsical dresses with our hair long and hanging down our backs in huge afros adorned with flowers as we scurried down to the Stone Soul picnic. Angela Davis. So, what does Angela Davis have to do with me, especially since she was the symbol of Black Power and I was the symbol of Black Powerless? Well, when I donned my jalaba, which was like a dashiki dress, and put on my fake glasses, people mistook me for the iconic Angela Davis. Sometimes they would follow me around stores, point their finger at me, and summon others to take a look at the powerful yet alarming Angela Davis. They'd even snap a picture from time to time with a flash camera in my face, nearly blinding me. The truth is, I really didn't look that much like Angela Davis. But in the small towns in southern Ohio and Pennsylvania, where Black people were rarely, if ever, seen, I was the bomb diggity dead ringer for Angela Davis. Facts. Let's get down to some real facts, shall we? As I said, the truth is I didn't look a lot like Angela Davis. Another truth is I wasn't much of a hippie either. I never took acid or smoked weed. In fact, I rarely even drank. Not even beer. Not even Thunderbird, the beverage of champions and the super cool. What's the word? Thunderbird. What's the price? 30 twice. What's the reason? Thunderbird season. I love that rhyme. But even that great rhyme did not persuade me to drink the infamous Thunderbird, not then and not to this very day. Cinnamon weed.
Roll another blunt. Yeah. Oh, la da 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 da. La da da. La da da da. La da da da. La da da da. Yeah. I was gonna clean my room until I got high. I was gonna get up and find the broom, but then I got high. My room is still messed up, and I know why. Why, man? Yeah, cause I got high. Because I got high. Because I got high. La da 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 da. I was gonna go.
I thought weed was a problem, but not for the reasons you might think. In fact, when I contemplated the issues with weed, it was without the insight of a connoisseur of the product. My knowledge was more like Bill Nye the Science Guy and less like the internationally proclaimed weed expert, Snoop Doggy Dogg. Nevertheless, I had an opinion, and let me tell you what it was. The biggest problem I saw with weed was that god awful, dreadful smell, like a skunk on steroids. Holy cow, that stuff smelled terrible. My husband, being the street savvy businessman that he was, had managed to acquire a large quantity of that funky weed in what was then called a brick. Literally a brick of compacted marijuana wrapped in aluminum foil. He stored it in the attic of our home. Tangentially, I knew he and one of his favorite cousins, an enterprising young man named Bug, were probably selling weed. But somehow in my world, which was roughly the Cosbys, meet Ozzie and Harriet, meet the Beverly Hillbillies, I just never quite put two and two together. One day it occurred to me that I might be able to make an incredible improvement in marijuana by simply changing its smell. In Geneva world, I could see all of the growers and sellers thanking me for revolutionizing their product. I imagined myself smiling, somewhat surreptitiously, but with a smug look of pure genius on my face. After all, I would be the person who created something that would indeed bring me worldwide celebrity. So, like the mad scientist I was, I grabbed the brick in one hand and a whole can of cinnamon in the other. I mixed them together, and voila! My magic formula turned the funky weed into a tantalizing bronze wonder with the lovely smell, the beautiful aroma of cinnamon. I even added sugar for a sweet flavor. Pure genius, I thought. Take that, Marie Curie. I just rocked the world of weed. After thoroughly blending the ingredients and adding a touch of water to achieve the desired consistency, I transferred the mixture onto a baking sheet. Now for the baking. I placed it in a 350-degree oven for 45 minutes, and that did the trick. It was gorgeous, and it smelled divine. The thought of adding chocolate chips crossed my mind. But even I thought that a Choco Synachronic might be a step too far. Besides, I aimed to conduct a double-blind study of sorts where only the researcher, me, could discern the difference after watching the subject smoke it. Chocolate chips would have been a dead giveaway. I exulted in my accomplishment, rewrapped the brick in aluminum foil, and returned it to the stash in the attic. The study begins. It was days before my study subjects returned for their brick. When they finally retrieved it, I was trembling in anticipation. When the joint was finally lit, I sat back, trying to contain my excitement. This was it, the moment when my groundbreaking experiment that would send shockwaves through the weed community had finally arrived. To my utter disbelief, the joint refused to cooperate. A sugary, glue-like substance oozed from the tip. This was not the grand spectacle I had envisioned. Bug, with his perpetually raised eyebrow, turned to Tommy, my husband, and exclaimed, "Man, this joint is too hard to draw." Then they both burst into laughter, struggling to keep their composure as they tried to take another hit. Apparently, it was a joint that could give even these seasoned smokers a run for their money. Their mouths were literally puckered. Their jaws were sunken in and their lips were turning blue. I can't tell you how astonished I was. I felt like a failed chemist who had accidentally created the world's first ever non-smokable cinnamon-infused weed glue stick. Totally defeated, I confessed my cinnamon-flavored escapade to the guys, hoping for at least a sliver of appreciation for my innovative idea. When I shared that bit of news, their mouths dropped open simultaneously. Their eyes were as wide as frisbees. I was in a low-grade panic. Then, without warning, they erupted into a fit of laughter again, even rolling on the floor. What in the world were they thinking? I tried to salvage the situation, asking if they had noticed the delightful taste and the pleasant aroma. Is that what that was? I thought it was some imported Jamaican ganja. They laughed even more. Disheartened, I gathered my books and made my exit. As I walked away, defeated, I couldn't help but think that maybe my talents were better suited for studying physics rather than the chemistry of weed wizardry. So the next semester, indeed, I changed my major from chemistry to physics, leaving my sweet, cinnamon-scented weed dreams behind. Thank you.
That was such a wild ride. I laughed. I have tears in my eyes from laughing. My fiance Brian is also watching. He texted me. It's just so funny. I love your storytelling. You really make him come to life. And of course, in our audience, you are more than welcome to ask Geneva a question in the Q&A panel down. So I have a question for you before giving our audience some time. You've been through a lot. You've had a lot of different life experiences with different types of education, and you've been in different jobs, and you've nurtured different talents, and definitely just a lot of the trials you've overcome. So is there any advice or any words of encouragement you could tell the people in the Marsh community or the ANCAN community? Because at ANCAN, we walk with families and their loved ones and patients with so many different types of conditions. And it's such a privilege to do that. But I'm just curious, what life lessons or words of encouragement do you have for our audience?
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm the granny of 18 and including great grandchildren. And so I am just loaded with far more advice than you ever would want to hear. And they surely would want to hear it either. So I'm going to try to keep this concise. But really, it goes back to what is true for all of us. Please be kind to yourself. This is the only self that you have. And you deserve to be treated well, to begin with, by you. And the people around you, if they also take care of themselves, I mean the ones who have not had your experiences, they are more available to support you. And don't be afraid to change, because change is life. Every single day we go to sleep and wake up to something different. Today we are very warm in Chicago. We had temperatures going up. I don't know if it actually hit it, but to 115 degrees in the Windy City. So I don't want to get off on the global warming story. I could get off on, but just to show that no matter what your circumstances are, you're always changing. And also, don't forget to be that yourself is way bigger than the confines of this little face and your arms and those things. You're way bigger than that. And so don't allow yourself to be limited to those things. Sadly, when you are a person who is experiencing the difficulty, very often you also have to be the teacher. You have to teach your family and friends.
Yes.
And sometimes that can be a little bit painful. Hopefully, we'll be getting more information and more books, and there'll be more ways for others to help them, so that you can have all the support you need while you're transitioning from whatever is your current situation. And by current, I mean today, because there are certain illnesses you might have that may change tomorrow and the next day. And whatever those situations are, allow yourself to be whatever you need to be.
Mhm.
whatever you want to be, and don't be afraid to ask for help. We should have been asking for it a long time ago. And the people who want to help you don't know what you need if you don't tell them.
Mhm.
So don't be afraid. Don't worry about them. If somebody gets mad because you ask them for help, well, just look the other way when they come back. If they come back, good. If they don't, get out of here anyway. And look at the ones who are going to hear you when you ask for help. And then don't forget. Now, see, I have too much advice. This is it, though. I'm not going to say another thing after this. Granny is going to shut up after this. But I can't emphasize enough how much you have to offer. You who are suffering from whatever is the issue. You are filled with things to offer. One of the things that is very important to me, my most current, my most recent within the past day accomplishment is to be a teaching artist from the Goodman Theater and teaching people to tell stories. So if you want to begin someplace, just telling your story is absolutely essential. Look what we're doing today.
Yes.
So you guys are like the world guides for helping people to tell their stories. And we learn sometimes not to share things and to be stoic and all that craziness, that'll definitely get you out of your mind. But if you can gently and carefully be allowed to tell your story, you have no idea who you might be helping. Okay.
Including yourself, Geneva. One of the things that, if you know Rick, he constantly is saying is that we have to be the patient voice. And because the whole reason is patient stories can change laws, patient stories
Absolutely.
can change policy. And it's so important to be able to give patients a platform and to give patients a safe environment where they are allowed to speak these things and bring change. And I look at our multiple sclerosis group, how many of them go to DC and they lobby, and it's just, I love it. I love um what you said. It really boils down to self advocacy, speaking up for yourself
Yes.
and sharing your story, and that's just incredible.
And to know how powerful you are. You're even empowered by your experience with some of the illnesses. So,
Yes. We actually have a question from the audience. Thank you so much for sharing your story and art with us, Geneva. In what ways has art helped you heal?
well, as I mentioned, just coming from a family of artists, I really abbreviated it um, just from my childhood. But I mean, I have just an incredible family um, of artists. I'm just trying to think to it. Well, I'm just going to mention one name. You've most of you, I'm sure you've heard of Kool and the Gang, and if you haven't, okay, so all those Bell brothers are all my cousins, and I have a lot more cousins, people who are writers like Leroy Burgess and Black Ivory and Betty Wright, and just lots and lots of people. So it's like it's a mechanism for communicating music for me.
Mhm.
The arts is an example. I mean, sorry, music is an example of one of the arts. But I have also recently learned. I took at my university. I mean, one other thing, which is photography, and so I've been seeing that. I learned in a whole different way what people are sharing with their photographs. That is art as well, and certainly the other fine arts, poetry. It's like a whole different realm of communication. And so you have all of your regular ways, but also you have your opportunity to um, share in a more exquisite and personal way. So even if you don't play any instrument or you never painted or any of that, even before something has happened, I would just strongly suggest that this is a good time This is a good time to find stuff you always wanted to do and do it. And don't worry if you, I mean, now, thank heavens, we have all kinds of devices. And even if you can't write, you can speak into a microphone and tell your whole story. And listen, you can say all the bad things you never were allowed to say. That's the most fun part for me. Okay, so the arts have helped me in every
Oh
way.
my gosh, that's incredible. And what an incredible place to end. I don't want to end Geneva. I want to talk to you all night long. Thank you so much for giving us the gift of your story tonight. And just, oh my gosh, I know so many people are going to be touched by this. Thank you, thank you, thank you to the Marsh. Please support them so we can continue to support and give platforms to stories like Geneva. And the earth without art is just So we've got to keep supporting our art and our live artists. Next month's guest is to be determined. Could it be you? You can sign up on our website and let us know if you would be interested in sharing how the arts have helped you. And I want to give a big thank you to Brianna John Ivory for ANCAN. And thank you so much. If you need support in the meantime, feel free to come visit us at ancan.org. We have art classes and other different things that we can support you with. So thank you, everyone, and good night.
And thank you. Thank you so much. It's been marvelous being with your team. Please,
Oh,
can I come
thank
back
you.
every week? Okay, sorry. Now
Yes,
I'm going to carry you
yes.
away.